Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to The Nest. This is Jim Chu from San Francisco, California, and today we have three inspiring entrepreneurs from Kenya and Bangladesh. We also have three business angels from the United States and also from Kenya. So let's introduce ourselves. My name, once again, is Jim Chu. I am an entrepreneur and investor based here in California. I started The Nest during the coronavirus lockdown because I wanted to connect more inspiring entrepreneurs from developing markets with investors from around the world. So here we are. All right, over to you, Sebastian.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Create a network, share electricity, brighten the future. That's the motto of Solch, and I'm going to take you through a quick ride to the future of energy, really. And that here from out of Bangladesh. And you assigned me 5 minutes. So I put up basically 5 points to discuss: vision, market opportunity, product and social impact, long-term profitability, and of course the ask. And to dive right into it, I want to introduce you to this young lady here, Maya. So that picture was taken in 2015. And what's special about Maya is, among many things, is that she was the first person on the planet to trade her excess solar electricity with her neighbors and got the benefit of that in real time onto her mobile phone. Maya was part of the first peer-to-peer energy exchange platform in the world, which was gone online here in Bangladesh in a remote village in 2015. And I want to stress a little bit the point of the implications of that, the implications for a systemic change, how we think of energy, how we use energy, and how we pay for energy. So imagine if all the people in a future of energy scenario have distributed assets, meaning in terms of solar PV panels, have batteries, could be Tesla Powerwalls, or it could be the millions of systems we have here in Bangladesh, which are lead acid batteries. And if you build a trading platform out of those and generate a synergy effect. So in Bangladesh, there are 6 million solar home systems. So the synergy effect of 6 million is 1 + 1 is 3. We learn in school on synergy. So just imagine the power you could unleash from that, globally speaking, of all distributed assets. So that as the vision for the systemic change we are trying to initiate here. Moving on the opportunity. So I just said there are 6 million solar home systems. What we found is that a solar home system on average has about 30%, 30, of excess energy. What is excess energy? It basically means it's 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Your battery is full, but the sun is still shining. A bigger battery is not an idea for multiple reasons in the rainy season and so forth. So if you calculate all that up, in a year, you have about $1 billion of energy which is wasted or dumped load, which is untapped. And that's the opportunity we're trying to tap into here in Bangladesh. And just to give you a little bit of a reality check, what such a solar home system looks like, what density looks like, and what 30 million solar home systems in the most densely populated country in the world looks like. It's really dense. This is a marketplace you see here, and only in this frame on your laptop right now, you see 53 solar home systems in a very narrow place. Moving on to the solution. So if we have $1 billion to tap into, our initial thought was just, okay, there are some people who don't have anything. They don't have access to electricity. There's no electricity grid. We're speaking of off-grid areas. And then we have people who have systems, but are somehow constrained in their use, sometimes need more power, sometimes less. So if I can put them together and build a grid out of these systems by interconnecting them, then I get a platform where solar home systems can exchange the electricity seamlessly between users and non-users. So whenever I need more power, I buy it, and whenever I need less, I can sell it, or my system sells it. And that's all wrapped into a solution by Solskjaer, which means that any trading is automatically settled on your mobile phone through the Bcash mobile wallet in Bangladesh, which by now is the biggest in the world, has just surpassed M-Pesa. So we're building on 2 world records, piggybacking. One is 6 million solar home systems, which is a world record, and the other one is the mobile money infrastructure. We're trying to put them together in a sharing economy-like model. How does it look like in reality? This is the smart meter you see in the middle. On the right bottom side, just as an example, you see the laughing Bimolda. He's a pharmacist. Right now in COVID, he's one of the busiest people in his village. And we want to really make sure that his lights stay on. Not only the lights, also the nebulizers for oxygen supply. So this is really the time where it has become even more critical in those areas. Moving on the social impact side, we had a Singapore social impact investor come over to do an assessment, an SROI assessment, so-called. It's by IIX, the Impact Investment Exchange. That's a social return on investment. And what they came up with is for every dollar invested into one of those soul share grids, you have a social return on investment of about $4.85. So that's 485% in social return. And moving on to the fourth part, the long-term profitability. So the model is we sell the meter B2B to those organizations who have installed the solar home systems, which helps us on the cash flow. And then we, on the platform, for every kilowatt hour which is traded between the houses, we take a trading fee. So that's the analogy to the sharing economy model. So we there expect a steady prosumer growth. Prosumer means a solar home system owner, sometimes a producer, sometimes a consumer, and a hybrid form of that. And that coupled with a strong increase in trading. And then we make sure that we are aligned with our business partner. So we share the trade volume fee with our business partners. So we both are fully aligned that the platform needs to grow. We have some good scope for geographical expansion. We've already set up 2 grids in India by now, next to the 30 grids we have in Bangladesh. And as a B2B play, with the larger scale, the R&D and the staff costs are offset, which will bring us to profitability. And talking about that in terms of the financing requirement, the ask and the use of funds, this is the slide usually where investors, Jim is already looking closer, where they look closer. So we are trying to raise a round of 2.75 million. And that is projected to last us for 3 years, which is the time we need to reach profitability under the given assumptions. In terms of what is already secured, all our existing investors have said that they go pari passu. We have about $750,000 in committed capital there through safe notes. We have about $350,000 secured in grants, and we're looking for a new investor to build a book of about $450,000. To throw something in, we have a current scheme in Bangladesh that for any dollar I get in angel investment here on the nest, we have a good opportunity to get a match fund here funded through the Swiss Development Corporation. So up to a maximum of $100,000. That brings us to 1.65, which leaves us with another 1.1, which we leave rather for the end of the year up to Q1 2021, once the COVID situation has calmed a little bit down. And so right now it's building the book. So the ask here for the nest is to be part of this $450,000 in through a safe note, which has a good potential to get matched here through the SDC. That's it from my side, because it's the 5 minutes, I think, done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for your presentation. Just really quick clarification on the numbers you just showed. Is there a cap on the valuation for the?
Yeah. So yeah. So the safe note agreed with the current shareholders is that we will have a cap at 7.25 million.
7.25. Okay. Great. Thank you. Over to Steve, Jim. Who would like to go first?
Jim,
well,
come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quick question. So, I am wondering about the. You mentioned the 2 to 3 o'clock during the day. There's a lot of sun and the storage. I'm just trying to understand a little bit more of the storage. Like, how much can people really rely on this? And then also, I'm curious. I was in Dhaka before, and I just remember wires everywhere. Wires along the street. Poles falling down. who owns the wires? Who owns like the little mini grid between all these micro connected houses? Who's responsible for the maintenance of the device and the warranty of the device? You know, the quality of this little microgrid.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim. So I noted two questions. First, on the storage. The beauty of the Bangladeshi system is that the solar home system sector, the success of the 6 million systems, was very heavily regulated with strong design criteria, quality assurance by a semi-governmental body, which is called ITCO. And that means that all those systems basically have the same system design specifics, which means you should have 3 days of autonomy, which means that your battery lasts you for 3 days. That's the ideal case. So the batteries are actually fairly big, but nonetheless, they still go full at 3 p.m. And there's a reason for that. So usually the intuition would be, let's just buy a bigger battery, or let's just buy a second battery. Both not good ideas. Bigger battery means that you will never fully charge it, and those are lead acid batteries, which means when you never fully charge them, they will sulfatate and they will break down fairly quickly, and it's the most expensive acid. A second battery is also not a really good idea because you can't put them together. They will perform as good as the worst performing battery. That's why we're really solving a problem of flexibility, of modularity, and so that's one of the key value propositions here on the in response to your storage side. On the wires, yes, we have chaos wiring here in Dhaka as well as in many other emerging markets in the capitals. We are operating in the off-grid sector, so where the national grid hasn't reached yet. So the way it works is when I say we piggyback on 6 million solar home systems, what I mean is the infrastructure in terms of assets, batteries and PV panels, but also the very successful organizations who have put those systems into the field. So for instance, our biggest customer is Grameen Shakti from the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. They have 2 million solar home systems only under their hood. We have started to interconnect. We have 20 grids with them and want to have about 100 by mid next year. So they are our business partner. They have 20 years of experience how to sell those systems, how to maintain them, and how to run the show in the villages. And we don't claim that we can do that any better. And that's why piggybacking, which means also I'm not buying any wire. It's Grameen Shakti who's doing that. I'm selling them my meter and tell them, look, I manage the grid remotely because every meter is an IoT device. And we share the benefits from that because I know you have to run the show on the ground.
Got it. Thanks.
Sebastian, I love the fact that you're making money both on the sale of the meters as well as on the trading platform. What do the economics look like on the trading side? And I think one of the audience members also asked a similar question. How much, from Agnes McKenna, how much are you charging, or what are the trading fees per kilowatt hour?
Yeah. So right now, we have been running this for a couple of years, but in terms of data, we are still a little bit in the dark. So what we said is, okay, look, if I don't have a solar home system, what solution could I have? I could have a solar lantern or something like that. If I have a system and I need a marginal extra unit of energy, how much would I be ready to pay? So the reference value was before the rudimentary trading we saw. Now, and what is when I buy a solar home system and I have to finance it over 24, 36 months, what is the average cost of generation there? And this is, so we said, if we make it too expensive, then it doesn't make sense for people who don't have an asset. If we make it too cheap, it doesn't make sense to invest into new solar home systems. So we have to see both sides. So the price is round about at about $1 a kilowatt hour, and the trading fee is 25%. So you sell for $1 and you buy for $1.25. It's all through mobile money. So it deducted from one meter, it's put on another meter, and the trading fee directly goes into our master wallet. That's how it works. It's pretty seamless. Like if you have an Uber ride, you don't really know what is happening.
75-25.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Steve, did you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a couple. So two things. One, I would really want to understand from what you've described, the mechanism by which the load shedding, I'm sure there must be the different shed loads, etc. So how do you manage that? Mm-hmm. And secondly, have you thought about selling to the grid? Because ultimately, if you're off grid, the grid is going to come at some point. And so have you planned an integration with the grid, negotiation with the main grid? And so what is the outline in that area? And I have a couple of other questions, but for now, let's get these ones on.
Well, Steve, those were two really good questions. And I mean, obviously, and that's why I said in the beginning, it's kind of a peek into the future of energy. We have the same problems than a national grid has. We have obviously a lot of loads which are switched on at 6 p.m. when all the people come home, switch on their lights, TVs, and so forth. We're trying to address this through multiple things. First of all, diversification is king also in our grids. If I have a couple of day laborers, a couple of people who run their business from house, if I have a couple of loads like water pumping and crop processing, which runs more during the day, this is all good for our platform. So what I need to do is I basically need to give Grameen Shakti as a customer the intelligence to say, okay, I need more storage, sell more batteries. I need more generation, sell more PV. I need more daily load, try to sell more this. Or I can see in this house, he is topping up a lot of money. He seems to be liquid, but by his temperature, he might need a fan. Go to this house and sell a fan. So this is kind of the intelligence we can offer, which is all to do with grid management. But we obviously we face the same challenges than any grid operator or grid manager, which is a really good and healthy exercise. On the national grid question, right on. There is strong grid electrification going on, both in India as well as in Bangladesh. And a few of our grids actually have been now overtaken by the national grid. So now it's interesting how this works because they're not complementary yet. So we applied for a regulatory sandbox to be allowed to hook it to the national grid. And the play we have here is under the hashtag recover better of a post-COVID world really is, we have a proposition for an energy policy where we say, can we negotiate a so-called community power purchase agreement for a selection of, let's say, 100 solar home systems, which feed together into the grid, because a single solar home system of 50 watt, 100 watt, it doesn't make technological or economical sense to feed in. It's too expensive to get the setup. But if I combine 100, I can feed it in one, what we call point of common coupling. And if I get a higher CPPA price, off-taker price, then this becomes a post-COVID pro-poor and renewable energy policy, because these guys could be net off-takers from the grid. That means they get more from the grid, but pay a much multiple less price, but sell a lot more, sell less, but get more money. So you are taking more electricity from the grid, but you end up with more money in your pocket. So this is something we're floating towards the authorities here. Technically, it's working. We have developed the prototype of this point of common coupling, and we're just waiting for the regulatory approval for the sandbox to try it out.
So Adnan Ali asked a similar question or made that similar remark about the regulatory system. And so it sounds like you're in regular dialogue with the regulatory authorities. Okay.
That's right, yeah.
And
sorry, Steve, I think you had a comment or a question.
Yeah, I had another question. So thank you very much for the answers. It gives me a bit of visibility. One of the reasons why I mentioned asking those questions, I was one of the early investors into the Solar Now, the Mobisols, etc. in Africa. So I see the future of energy exactly the way you said. I think one of the advantages of Bangladesh is, as you mentioned, everything is standardized. So my question to you is, if you were to come to Africa, and unfortunately, even within one country, you may have different devices with different batteries, there's competition, right? So how would you integrate that into an ecosystem where there's a lot of competition and the devices and the batteries are very, very different?
True that, yeah. I mean, and that's basically, that is the challenge we have on, if we are truly a platform, obviously we don't want to design it as an Apple product. We want to make it as integratable as possible. So we have early on being in conversation with the Willem, Solar Now, the Thomases from Mobisol, the M-Copas and so forth, to make sure that what are their pain points. And they have these are fantastic companies. They have a lot of intelligence on their platforms. So how can we make our platform modular enough that we can tap certain modules, let's say only the trading, because they don't need our intelligence on loads, and they can do that probably better than we can because they have more years and more units deployed there in East Africa. But how can only the trading module be integrated with them? So that's the challenge we have to have. But that we have to meet, because that's a requirement in order to be able to go into such a market as Sub-Saharan Africa as a B2B play.
Thank you.
Maybe you mentioned this, but what's your current burn? How much are you? How close are you to profitability?
Yeah. So our burn right now is $40,000. We reduced it by about 40% since COVID arrived. That was a strong mandate, and we managed that. And in terms of profitability, I mean, hands on the heart, it'll take us. It's a platform, and that's why the big ask of 2.75 million. We estimate based on our model that it will take us 3 years to hit profitability.
And is your main revenue driver from the trading or from the device sales?
Definitely, in the projections, definitely the trading. The device sales, I often say it's kind of the Wi-Fi router, right? You don't want to make money on the Wi-Fi router. You want to make money by selling internet.
Okay. Great. There's a couple of questions one question that I had before I asked some of the ones from this audience. Have you explored bringing some of this to other markets, including Africa? And to what extent have you already had discussions? How far are they along, if any?
So right now it's a theoretical exercise to make sure that our platform is not built for us, but built as a B2B product. We get a lot of requests, but to be frank, it would I don't think it would be strategically wise to make that jump now. We have to figure out, we have to do our homework here. South Asia with Bangladesh and with this move into India recently, these are two gigantic markets. And I think we should figure out a sustainable business model here before suggesting such a move, but always, of course, with one step in the future, keeping in mind in the product design and the tweaks, that this will be a step we will take.
Okay. Let me read a question or a comment from the audience. What about theft and piracy of the electricity? Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's a major problem for the grid. This is a question from Sean Durkin. And Sean, feel free to chime in if you want a clarification. Yeah, how do you deal with that? Does the data help? Yeah.
So, I mean, let me first give you the soft answer, not the data answer yet. People tend to steal from the national grid because the national grid is some kind of invisible body, right? It's probably a semi-governmental body and so forth. People do not tend to steal so much from each other, from your neighbor, because you're living next to him and he's very much visible to you. So, and that holds true. So our data indicates we have theft, but very, very little. And that is basically a peer-to-peer network means my cable runs to my neighbor. And if I tap in there, that neighbor will see it. And even if he doesn't, I will see it because I have all the data in the back end. So yes, when we see stealing, we do a phone call and say, look, mate, I can see what you're doing there. But it's not as big of a problem as we were fearing, to be honest. And I think it's largely because it's not this big invisible utility. It's also not a mini grid with some external investors. These solar home systems are the people's. This is their own systems.
Yeah, no, and I definitely can vouch for that effect. The community effect and people being accountable to their neighbors is a very, very, very strong force. Okay. Well, very good. Thank you for the questions, audience. And Jim, Steve, thoughts?
So Yeah, I really like the model, to be honest. I wish it was in Africa. That would be my comment. I'll be monitoring and seeing what you're doing now. But as soon as you want to come to the continent, I'll be the first to give you some insight as to who to speak to and how to bring it over. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And I might even get back to you right away to know a little bit more on the pain points from your point of view, given your experience in investing in some of the very good companies.
Thanks, Steve. Jim, did you have a comment, or I'm happy to jump in if.
No, I think I had a glitch on no, I think the model's very clever. I'm curious about the reliability of the devices, sort of how difficult it will be to maintain these networks and whatnot. But I'm also quite surprised about the scope of solar rollout in Bangladesh. I haven't been there in a long time, and it's very encouraging to hear. And then you did mention this notion of finding, things that could be, off take for when there's peak, and very interesting comments with respect to batteries, water pumping, things that matter in Bangladesh. There's not a lot of pump storage in Bangladesh, so what else can you do? All very interesting. So I would like to hear a little bit more and get a chance.
On my side, this is great. I love what you've done with the concept and the many possible directions, whether it's on the data side, on the integration side. I also like the fact that you have a business model that has some flexibility. And I think most importantly, you use the word untapped earlier. So just for that reason alone. I think a little bit of background, what we're trying to do is create a better way to do asset financing. And I think there's a lot of synergy between what you will need to scale up, what utilities or even communities will need to be able to finance some of these systems initially, and what we're trying to do in terms of bringing more capital in hard assets that can be secured. On top of that, I love the data side of things, and I love the possibilities that creates. And I really do hope that we can bring this over to Africa. So Steve, when we're ready to do that, we definitely should speak. But yeah, I'm in. I'd like to do an investment. I would say pending a more thorough due diligence on your financials and numbers, I'm in for 50K for the terms that you mentioned. So let's talk in detail. Let's go through a little bit more of the numbers. But I think I'm ready to commit.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Thanks a lot for your confidence here. Yeah.
And also, I wonder if there might be others who might be interested in coming in, and I think I might be able to pull together a bit of a syndicate to perhaps bring in a little bit more, with a couple more people, 2 or 3 more people after a little bit of due diligence, obviously. And on top of that, again, and although we're not in Bangladesh, but I think we're always open to good partnerships. On the debt side, again, the untapped business model and financing this as an asset, secure asset finance. Potentially, we can do much more in terms of debt financing than the smaller equity investment that I just mentioned. So I think we're interested on both sides of that. I don't know if you've already thought about or have spoken to anyone or put together any type of asset financing possibilities for your B2B customers, but that's something that perhaps we can develop together.
Yeah.
Your company or Untapped.
Great. These are great ideas. Yeah. We haven't explored it much yet on asset financing, but obviously we see the need because it's quite unfair how these assets are usually financed. The tenures are usually too short. But yeah, happy to learn more about that.
The problem, right?
Yep. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. There's got to be some, you know, with the flows of capital and the value of the boxes, there's got to be clever debt ways to do this, royalty based, all sorts of clever stuff.
And you know, I think I've already offered this to another company, and I think I'm willing to offer this to yours as well. Is potentially, how do I say, backstopping some existing debt that you have in order to get to the right tenures. So if you're able to secure SCF 3 or even 5-year tenor loan, with conditions being met, I potentially could extend that to 7 years, right? So I could sign something in advance that says I will guarantee taking on.
All right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
7 or 8 year tenure on that debt.
We have this from the Development Bank of in Singapore, DBS, actually on the table, especially for social enterprises. And that's the point of content right now, the guarantees.
I'll do the earlier stuff, and then you know we can split the margin of the spread. Okay. Anyway, we talk about that later.
Can I come in just briefly on that, Jim and Sebastian? So actually, I can talk about it very briefly, but the models that I know some of the competitors or potential partners in Africa have used is essentially raise an SPV, a special purpose entity that issues a debt to a number of investors. Investors contribute and give them cash flow returns. And that's been how the Corpus and many, many more have used to raise huge amounts of capital, essentially to finance the material, you know, the containers of devices. So yeah, we can talk about it again as advisor or whatever issue.
And Steve, let's connect on that topic very specifically, because I'm doing that with a couple of different companies in Africa. And,
excellent.
That is the core of the Untapped business model throughout.
Okay.
So we want to do that in a primarily for digitally leased or digitally leashed assets.
Okay.
For Sebastian, you know, pay-go water, pay-go refrigeration, etc. So
absolutely.
Anyway, let's talk about that separately, and hopefully we can pull something together as a syndicate.